Hi, this is Lady Lecture K, and this is a Dreams tutorial. I've had a request. How do I do enemy waves so that the enemy spawns more and more every time as we go through the round? Right. Word of warning for this. The amount of creatures, puppets that you can spawn will be limited. You will get lag at certain points. You can't put in an infinite number of enemies into your level without it starting to lag, get really slow, things will stop rendering, all of that sort of thing. And that will depend entirely on the complexity of your puppet model or rigged sculpture that you've got for your enemy. And so that I can't give you an exact number at what point it's going to do that, because it really does depend on what you've built. So I can't say to you, oh, you can only put in 20 enemies at a time or 30 enemies at a time or whatever. It really does depend on what your enemy is. So that in mind, this is going to increase the amount of enemies that are spawned as you go up through the rounds. But I would suggest you set yourself an upper limit on this so that you don't go over. Right, you'd have to experiment. First of all, I've got a cube in here. This is, I'm going to use this as my spawning cube. And this is set to be invisible and non-collidable. And I've put an emitter on the cube. And the emitter is going to emit this goblin here. So let's set that up. So here's my emitter. I'll open up the tweak menu. I've got it set to emit at 5 meters a second, and it's going to emit one every second. It's on continuous. I've got a emitted object lifetime in. If it's an enemy, you probably will want to set that to infinite. I've just got it for this demo purpose, so I don't have too many creatures in my world at one time. And we've got those both set to maximum as well. So we're going to object to emit. We're going to choose our goblin. And now you can see where my goblin is here. This is where he's going to emit. So I'm going to place him on my cube, or in my cube. So I know that's where he's going to spawn. Wherever my cube is, that's where he's going to be. So that's the spawning point for my goblin. And so that's done. Now, let's see what happens when he spawns. There we go. He has shrunk down, as you can see, to the size of the cube. So we can make our cube a bit bigger, and he'll be a bit bigger. Let's try that. There we go. Maybe a bit too big now. Let's just shrink it down. So the cube size and the size of your object is relative. So you can get your cube at the right size so you're emitting your goblins at the right size. So that's that done. Right, now here is the microchip that determines how many goblins are going to spawn. Right, I've decided to put in a variable called round. And for the purposes of the demonstration, I've got a method of increasing the round artificially by pressing the cross button. So I've got a remote control sensor and a variable modifier, which is adding 1 to the round number. Obviously in your game, your round numbers will be created in another way. Right, so you've got your round number. That's being displayed up here with this number displayer. Every time that round increases, I'm going to put this 10 counter on, and that is what is wired into the power of our emitter. So as soon as this counter is on, the emitter is on. How long that emitter is on for depends on this timer, and this timer is set up so that the current value is the target time. So when this is round 1, it'll be open for 1 second. So this timer here, this target time will be 1 second. So the time will be on for 1 second, and when it's round 2, it'll be on for 2 seconds. Now obviously I've done a like for like into this timer. You could put a calculator in between these two numbers, and you could have a logarithmic system so that the gate is open for different amounts of time, or you could even use a signal manipulator instead of the round number, so that this timer is open for a different amount of time. Anyway, this is what it's currently doing. Every time it's increased, it's going to reset this timer. So this timer will run, and then when the timer is finished, it's going to reset this counter as well. So the counter is going to go on for a second. Then when the round goes up, it's going to go on for 2 seconds. When the round goes up again, it's going to be on for 3 seconds. So that's how it's going to work. And at the moment, we're going to produce 1 goblin a second. So let's try it out. So we get no goblins at all, and then we get to round 1. Now, it's open for 1 second, but because it just about gets round for that 1 second, I end up with 2 goblins. But this is a 2-second gate. I get 3 goblins. A 3-second gate. My goblins are making a lot of noise. 1, 2, 3, 4, which you can't hear. Yes, you can. Yes, you can. You can hear those. Right, okay, so round 4. We got a lot more. Now, they're all in single file. They're all being produced at the same rate, so it's a bit boring. So let's change this up a bit. Now we've got our spawning cube here. What we can do is I can animate it with an action recorder. I can actually slap that on the box so that I know that's what it is. And we'll just move it around. So we're going to move this box around a bit like this. So that's nice and random. So now, when we spawn our goblins, that's going to move around. Okay, so we're spawning them, and they're being spawned in different places. Like so. So we don't get them all in single file, they're all over the place. And I want to add some extra randomness in. We can put in a signal manipulator, or signal generator rather. And what we can do with this is I'm going to set a minimum of what should we say? Between 0.5 and we'll say 0.5 and 0.9. And then we'll pop that signal into the emitter's time between emits. So we'll put that at 0, and they'll do that again. We'll wind. So that signal wire goes into time between emits. Now let's see what that does to our emitter. So they're either emitting, you're getting more every wave, but they are emitting at slightly different times, so they're not completely staggered out. It looks a little bit more natural and random. So you can play about with the signal manipulator, and also how long the gate is open for, which will depend on how many you get, and also movement of that spawn cube. You can get it so that it's really random, and placing them at different places all over the map. So they don't have to just spawn out of a cave, they can spawn anywhere. You can also set it so that the box teleports all over the place. You could have it on a timeline, so it's teleporting to different spots and spreads your enemies around. That's the beauty of a spawn cube. You can place it anywhere you like. But this way we get nice random selection. And as you can see, you're getting more goblins every time the round goes up. And like I say, it'll get to a point where you'll be spawning too many goblins and it won't like it. But at the moment we're okay. So there we go. This is a simple method, and you can make it more complicated by adding signal generators, more movement, teleporters, all sorts of things you can add to this very, very basic idea. So the basic idea is basically you have a timer that is open a little bit longer every time you have a round, so therefore you've got more opportunity for monsters to spawn. And that's as simple as it gets. And then you can randomize the time between emits, and you can randomize where they emit, and that makes all the difference for spawning your enemies into your world. So I hope that was useful for you. Thank you for watching, and I'll catch you in your dreams.